Kayla Ebby here with the Educator Chipotle Challenge, doing an Educator Shout Out Interview with Jennifer Wolfe. Jennifer, why don't you share with us what your position is in education and how long you've been in that position?
Hi, my position right now is I'm an English language arts avid reading teacher in Davis, California, and I'm actually teaching in the junior high school that I attended when I was a kid, so I work in my hometown. I'm starting my 28th year of teaching middle school. I know some people say I'm crazy, some people say I have a special place in heaven, but I just think it's fun. So I'm in the right place for me, for sure. It was a little weird walking into the classrooms that I had been a student in, but that was, it's all part of the full circle effect, I think. So I think, 28 years is a long time, but so far so good.
And what or who inspired you to become an educator? Are there educators that you would like to shout out to?
I would like to, but unfortunately he's passed. But the cool thing is that growing up in Davis, we had a small community, small schools, and there were teachers there that everybody knew, and you were lucky if you were able to be in their class. And one of the teachers that really made an impact on me was Joe Carey, and his son still works in Davis. And Joe Carey was my 8th grade English teacher. And so it's just really weird and strange that I ended up teaching 8th grade English also. But, when you're a kid, I don't know that it necessarily made me want to be a teacher, but I do remember the kindness that he showed to everybody. And I was particularly impressed when I came back here as an adult. And he had long since retired, but he recognized me. He came over to my house and helped me with lesson plans. He brought me things for my lessons. He wanted to know all about what I was doing in the classroom. And more than that, he remembered specifics about particular classes, particular kids in the classes, things that they would say. And it made me really realize how much of an impact people can have on a child, even when you don't realize it at the time. You just know that they make you feel happy being around them. So it was cool that I did get to connect with him, and he knew what I was doing, and I think it pleased him. And I got to attend his funeral, and that might sound a little weird, but it was kind of just a way to pay homage to a person who was really phenomenal. And he's the kind of man who, if you say his name in Davis education, lots of people will say he made a difference to them.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, you talk about full circle impact. Yeah, that's beautiful. I don't think it's weird at all. I as you've been following it, I have interviewed some of my former educators, and I think that those relationships are so special. So for you to be able to not only connect with him after so many years of him having you in class, but for him to help you create your own classroom cool. and your own style as an educator. That is the crux of why so many educators are in education, is to make that difference, to have that impact, and to be that person in a young person's life that has such an impact.
And I was never a person who knew I wanted to be a teacher. I never knew that I was I'm pretty quiet and introverted. I like to read, I like to write, I liked school, and I started school at a very young age because my parents just said you need to be in school. So it doesn't surprise me actually that I'm an educator, but I think what surprises me is how much education has changed me as a person, and the things about me as a human that I'm able to learn that I don't know that I would have if I wasn't teaching and being around other people who care about making change happen. So having been teaching for 28 years, there's been a couple pivot points in my life, and one of the pivot points happened about 7 years ago when I started working outside of the classroom and working with other teachers. And for a variety of ways, I've done fellowships and consulting and presenting. And when social media took off with educators, especially things like Twitter, and being able to utilize the internet to make connections with other teachers, that has been probably what saved me in this profession, because I got to a point in 2010 when I wasn't really very happy with what I was doing. I was feeling kind of stagnant, and a connection I made had pushed me into applying for a fellowship with the U.S. Department of Education. And because of that, I realized that educators across the country, actually globally, this was a global fellowship, have a lot of the same challenges that we have here in Davis or here in the United States. And the connections I can make with people in my state or in my country or in different countries around the world have strengthened me and supported me with continuing my profession and continuing to grow myself as an educator. So while it's not a specific shout out to one person, it's kind of a shout out to educators everywhere who are willing to collaborate and willing to find people, even if they're not in your school or even if they're not in your town or your district, to know that there's other people out there who are really interested in teaching as a craft and how to continually provide the best opportunities for our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I just am doing the ECC for 34 days now. I have felt that camaraderie and that sense of strength and unity just in seeing all of these educators, from school counselors to teachers of various levels, out there on social media and just connecting with them. It's a really positive feeling.
Yeah, when you meet your friends in real life, that you've only known on chat groups or hangouts or whatever, it's super fun, and you realize that there's a community of people that don't have to be, and that's the beauty of course, being able to access technology. I'm starting to do the Global Read Aloud project this week with my students, and we're connecting with teachers all over the country and all across the world by the shared love of a book, and our kids will be connecting that way too. So I think that teachers, when you're feeling stuck or you're feeling stagnant, go on Twitter. Hashtag English teacher. You're going to find lots of people out there who are really cool.
Yeah, gosh, yeah. I mean, that takes the experience of being pen pals back in my elementary school days to a whole new level.
Oh, yeah.
Being able to face to face with your pen pals,
exactly,
and be FaceTime pals, and that's
it's
really
a real
cool.
authentic audience.
Yeah. Jen, what are the most rewarding and the most challenging parts about being an educator?
The most rewarding, the most challenging oftentimes go together. At the end of a day, when I have had a kid who's come up to me and said thank you, or when I have had somebody talk to me and share something that was really hard for them to say, or when I have seen a kid who tells me, I hate to read, but he's finished 2 or 3 books in the first 3 weeks of school, or when a parent says, thank you, you made my day for telling me my son is doing well. I think those kinds of things are what's most rewarding. And people joke that teachers aren't in it for the money, and really that's true, but I think what we are in it for is that sense of knowing that we're making a difference. And for me personally, it is not about teaching content, it's about teaching kids.
Did I hear you correctly, or am I that people are not in it for the money?
Right, because there really isn't very much money associated with it.
For a second I thought you meant that. I thought I heard that they are in it for the money.
Because
I was on board with you.
No, that was
all
the
crow
crying
right,
behind you.
Right, because educators are in it for the outcome, not the income.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah,
okay.
and I think, but for me, the outcome is, it's the day-to-day stuff that happens, and it's the being able to go to a job that is really hard, and physically and mentally and emotionally, and have those days where it just never seems like it's going to end, and yet knowing at the end of the day that a kid felt comfortable to cry in my room and let me know that they were hurting or that they needed someone to see them. And so for me, those are the rewarding parts. And that has come as I have aged, I think. I don't know that when I started teaching in the 90s, it wasn't that I wasn't empathetic or connecting with kids, but it was that the educational environment was different at that time. And I think now with the focus on social emotional learning and trying to build relationships first and then educate second, that has been what's been filling me up in the last, especially in the last 7 years, where I've been focusing on that. And then the content happens, and it's really cool. So being able to see, you're teaching kids, they're learning the academics because they know you care. I think that's kind of the secret about teaching middle school, or really any grade level. The challenging part, though, I mean, aside from not being able to,
Hey.
being able to feel like I'm making enough money to put my own kids through college, is that frustration of being a young teacher and then having my own children and trying to figure out where boundaries were. And I think teaching is a service-oriented job, and so when people do those kinds of jobs, they tend to put themselves after everybody else. And so having a whole day of that and then trying to figure out how to balance that with wanting to make sure I do the best job with my own kids was really challenging for me. And I think part of that has to do with time and the way our educational systems are set up, and they're so rigid and inflexible, and they don't allow teachers to be creative with their time during the class periods or during the day or during the month, and really force us to kind of become robotic. And that pushes a lot of the people to do work outside of the school day and to figure out where are your boundaries. How do you practice good self-care? I see a lot of teachers suffering from anxiety and depression, and marriages breaking up, and relationships falling apart, or not being able to find time for relationships, or feeling like your own kids are struggling because you're taking care of somebody else's kids. And the flat out fatigue that happens to a lot of teachers because they don't know how to put self-care first. And I talk to young teachers all the time. I mentor them, and I talk to them in real life and online, and about how do you practice self-care, and what is it okay to shut off your email at 4 o'clock, and is it okay to go out and do something, or just simply stay home and read a book on the weeknight instead of grading papers.
Sure.
To create those clear lines between work and life, which is very hard to do when you're in education. And now that I'm an empty nester, I see it from a different perspective also. I don't have children taking up my time at home, but that makes it almost harder to stop and to see, because you never have enough time. I never feel like I get to a finish line. I'm very goal-oriented, and there's always something else that's happening. So that can be really frustrating for me and very, very challenging. And I've seen a lot of teachers leave the profession because the demands are outpacing the rewards.
Jen, you've talked a lot about the importance of self-care, and I wonder what the needs are of students and how you would recommend they practice self-care, and educators.
I talk
as
about
well.
that all the time in my classroom. Being the avid teacher and coordinator, part of my job is teaching kids how to be successful in school, and I think that it really starts with recognizing that school, it can be stress-inducing, and that we recognize that in students. And I want them to know that at school that they have support systems. We try and create in my AVID classes a sense of family, and I think when kids know that somebody else sees them, that they hear them, that they know that they're struggling, that's a really great first step. I think having small learning communities or teacher connections where kids can have an adult that they feel that they can trust. And that doesn't happen just by putting you in a class with them. That happens by intentionally devoting time to develop relationships with your students. And I don't think we spend enough time doing that in education. I think we're so focused on the outcome and the content driving home that we forget that these are children that are dealing with a whole range of issues, and especially in middle school, where they have so much that they're becoming aware of about themselves and they don't understand, and sometimes they're a child and sometimes they're an adult. To be mindful that's hard for them is super important. I think there's a lot of things that can be taught and addressed in the classroom that we really don't give kids enough credit for. We think that they know how to do a lot of things, and just by virtue of that, it causes a lot of anxiety. And I think when I was very first starting to teach, a woman who had more experience than I said, I just wake up every day knowing that kids want to do the right thing. And that has stuck with me for almost 30 years. And I think, kids don't wake up going to school and think, oh, I can't wait to fail today.
Right.
I can't wait to be a jerk today.
Right.
They just don't do that. And they might think that that's how the day is going to go. But I don't believe for a second that that's how kids, that what their intention is. And operating from that point of view, I think kind of shifts the way we look at mental health issues for kids. And when we look at a kid who is having a panic attack, or a kid who is really listening, and I had a kid today say, every single day of the week, I don't look forward to anything except Friday. And he just dropped that on me at the end of the period. I said, really? Tell me about that. And we started talking more about what that means, and I was trying to figure out, is this kid practicing self-harm, or get the big picture, and he's just talking and talking. And I think it turns out that what he's really saying is, I am so overscheduled and my parents are making me do so many things that all I really want to do is go home and read a book, or lay on the grass, or play with my dog, and I see that a lot in our community of kids, parents for all the best intentions, or maybe they're trying to get their kid to try a lot of things, and then kids end up not knowing how to say no. I see a lot of anxiety in kids for that way. So I would love to see resources on campuses where we had, of course, more than a 400 counselor caseload or something like that, ridiculous. More programs where we are able to break it down and have kids in small groups with teachers, but also peer-to-peer connections. I'd like to see more mentorship opportunities for kids to be connecting with the younger ones. Kids listen to kids. I have college students who intern in my classroom, and I always talk to them about make the relationships first with them, because they see you as somebody that is not too far away from them, and they might feel comfortable saying, I don't know how to do this, or could you help me, in a way that they aren't going to do with the teacher.
Sure.
Having opportunities like that where we can bring in kids to help other kids would be huge. Give training, to talk to teachers about ways that you can handle conflict in the classroom, or alternative methods from what many teachers were taught about classroom management, which is really more like classroom leadership.
Yeah, that's super important. All of those things are super valuable, and hopefully people watching will take that to heart and take that into their own practices, whether you're a student or an educator or a parent.
Yeah, and it's about thinking about, well, for me, how would I want my child to be treated in a classroom, and thinking about that perspective. How do you want our world going forward? How do you want people to treat each other? And do you want it to be an authoritarian system where my way is the only way, or do you want to have people feel like they're being heard and listened to, and figuring out different ways to handle conflict?
For the final question is, what advice do you have for an aspiring educator?
There's a lot. Don't take yourself too seriously, but take yourself seriously. And what I mean by that is that take care of yourself, because if you think that the world will stop spinning if you take a day off to go to the doctor, or to get your teeth cleaned, or to go to a conference, you're mistaken, because we like to think, teaching can be kind of an egocentric thing where we think we are the center of everything that goes on, but in reality, if you don't take care of yourself first, then you're not going to be any good there. So for new teachers, I tell them work hard. work hard, take your job seriously in that you are trying to do your best every day, and yet know that it's okay to say no. You don't have to say yes to everything. Trust your gut. Ask for help. Try new things. Don't be afraid to do something goofy or risky. And there's always another day tomorrow. And number one, create strong boundaries for yourself. Boundaries, because teaching does not need to be your entire life. It's going to be with you 24/7. You're going to think about how you could do things differently or better, but you really need to create those boundaries so that when you are not teaching, you are recharging and resting and doing things that fill you up, so you can share that with the kids. Nobody likes a cranky teacher. Just like nobody likes a cranky teenager. It's kind of very similar. So take a mental health day.
Absolutely.
I encourage that.
Yes. Yes. Take a mental health day.
And eat healthy. Chipotle, you should eat more Chipotle. That was a pretty darn good burrito there.
Yeah, it was. And thankfully I get to do it for, oh gosh, we're gonna have to do math again.
34 minus 365, or wait, the other way around.
Yeah, 365
So you have 321 more days.
321. Only 321.
You're almost 10%, right? It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's going to fly.
It is. Jen, thank you so much for being part of the Educator Shout Out Interview and bigger picture of the Educator Chipotle Challenge. Your insights are super valuable, and I hope that people watching this video will take those tidbits from your experience to heart as they become educators and are able to spend 28, 38 years in the profession, and that.
You think we'll be replaced by robots? I think if you're not careful, teachers, you could be replaced by robots in 30 years.
Could be. But
so 30 years ago, we didn't even have cell phones. We didn't have computers. We didn't have Chipotle. So I don't know. Things are looking up, but watch out. Those robots, the AI is going to take over. You got to keep sharp, keep on your toes, make those boundaries. Get your side hustle going, just in case. You never know.
You got this.
It's good.
Don't give up. Don't give up.
Don't give up. Never. Never.
Day 34, Educator Chipotle Challenge. Kayla Ebby and
Jen Wolfe.
Over and out.